Welcome to the very first episode of Talks with Tam, real conversations about real life in our community. I'm your host, Tam. Today we're shining a light on strength, resilience, and survival. I'm honored to welcome three incredible women who I personally know, Miss Shonda Greene, Miss Natausha Mitchell, and Miss Lutricia Overton. Each of them are breast cancer survivors who faced the fight, walked the journey, and now share their stories to inspire, educate, and encourage others. We'll talk about their challenges, their victories, and the message of hope they want every woman and every family to hear. Ladies, welcome to Talks with Tam. I'm so grateful to have you join me. So, before we get into you guys' powerful stories, I want to give our listeners a chance to get to know each of you a little bit better, like an introduction, introduce yourselves, tell us where you're from, just so we can get to know you guys a little bit better. Even tell us what you're doing to keep busy these days. Tasha, we can start with you.
Oh, man, I'm excited to be the first one. Well, I am Natausha Mitchell. I am the founder of I Press for Life Foundation, which is a breast cancer awareness foundation here locally in Charleston, where we do a lot of education on early detection and prevention of breast cancer. I Press for Life, I guess for me, it's my baby. It was created in 2018, and that was just a year after I was diagnosed with ductal carcinoma in 2017, which was something that was very new to myself and my family, not having any education or background about breast cancer at that time. So I became an advocate for the thing that changed my life, I guess, if you will say. That has been the main advocate that I've, focused on in my life so far. My biggest supporters during that time, I have 3 sons. They have been my main support team during this whole ordeal and change in life, and they're still doing that. Being in the healthcare, I've been in healthcare since 2014, now transitioning from bedside care to behind a desk, but definitely advocating for healthcare with patients and also advocating for women, dealing with breast cancer, facing it, and oncoming. But in a nutshell, keeping myself busy, still trying to pour into my foundation, still trying to educate women, and looking forward to possibly coming up with a deodorant line, a non-aluminum deodorant line that I am trying to create. It has taken me out of the, I want to say, the public eye a little bit when it comes to events, and I'm trying to work behind the scenes because, breast cancer is more than, events and pink ribbons. We have to go deeper into, creating things that will prevent it from the beginning. So that's
Absolutely.
What's been keeping me busy. And that's me. And then I'm also the very dear friend of the host. And I'm just honored to be here this morning.
Oh, thank you so much, Tasha. And thank you for your introduction. And I saw that you posted about the deodorant. And we'll get into that because me and Trika used to have conversations about that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, back in the day. Shonda or Trika?
I can go. So my name is Shonda Greene, and I currently reside in Savannah, Georgia, but I'm originally from South Carolina, Ridgeville, Clubhouse Section to be specific. I've been here for the last 18 years. I was diagnosed with invasive ductal carcinoma in 2014, May of 2014, grade 3. Currently, like I said, I've been here for 18 years. I work in a nonprofit organization in the museum sector, raising my son, just trying to juggle being newly empty nester sort of kind of thing. So right now I'm keeping my busy with giving back in all different capacities as much as I can, because now that I've raised him and, my health is good, I just would really like to touch as many lives as I can in any way that I possibly can.
Amazing. Thank you, Shonda, for your introduction. Trika?
Well, since y'all made me go last, y'all know that the number 3 signifies completeness, harmony.
All right. Okay, now.
Across all spiritual aspects, just so y'all know, because I love numbers. Anyway,
All
my
right.
name is Lutricia Overton. I am a proud native of Summerville, South Carolina, where I graduated from the Summerville High School, home of the Green Wave.
Woo-hoo!
Yes. I have two beautiful daughters. One's a chemist in Columbia, and one is a junior at Claflin University. I currently also have a new grandbaby, 8 months old, who is the absolute joy of my life. Never thought that loving a person could be so wonderful until she came. Currently, what's keeping me busy these last couple days, I am a furloughed employee right now, so I've just kind of been pouring into my embroidery business. Um, I actually registered to go back to school to complete my PhD, and I'm also registered to actually get my certification in coding. So just trying to keep my mind busy through this treacherous times of this furlough.
All right. Thank you, Trika, for that introduction. I thank all three of you ladies for those amazing introductions. So, what I want to do is, I really want to start from the beginning. Um, let's share a little bit about how your journey with breast cancer began, such as what led to your diagnosis and what were your first thoughts when you heard those words, you have breast cancer. Natausha, did you want to start again?
I can. Um, so, wow. I prepared myself for this. I prepared myself for this, but every time that I go back and tell this part of my story, I get a little emotional. And that's just so weird because that just hit me. But this is real. This is real talk. So I had no idea. Like I wasn't a person that knew a lot about breast cancer at the time. I heard about it, knew that it was very aggressive, knew that it was, high numbers in Black women, and just, knew just the minimum of what anyone would average, would know averagely about it. But I was, waking up at night, and I would wake up to my shirt being soiled, you know, on the right side of my chest area. And I thought, it's just so crazy how you go back and think about things and realize that you just miss so many things. And I thought that I was just sweating. I thought maybe I was just, sweating on that side of my chest, and it was just nothing. So, a few nights went by and it kept happening. And didn't really have any soreness, didn't have any, discoloration, anything that was, out of the ordinary physically. And so I just went to my doctor, went to my primary, talked to her and told her, I said, I have this issue going on. I'm not really sure where this discharge is coming from. I thought I was sweating, but this is obviously thicker than, average fluid. And the first question she asked out of nowhere, she said, she was like, do you have a history of breast cancer in your family? And I said, my mother was diagnosed with cancer, but not breast cancer. I said, but, no, an aunt, but other than that, So they suggested that I go and get a mammogram, and went in. I was working downtown at MUSC, left the art building, walked over to Hollings, got the mammogram, and it was just a simple thing. I wasn't thinking or preparing myself for anything. I just, it was just, I'm just going to get this done. And then the next step, I maybe, take medicine, just basic stuff. And went in, got the mammogram, and the doctor came in after and said, okay, this is fine. You should hear from us in, maybe 3 to 5 days. Something was sent in the mail. No worries. Everything should be fine. And I was fine. Left, went back to work, finished my day. Went back to work the next day. And the next day, I received a phone call, and they asked me to come back over for a second screening. And I didn't think anything of it. On my lunch, walking over like nothing, preparing to eat lunch afterwards. And took a second mammogram. And, before they took me in, they said, well, we just want to have a second, screening to compare to the first, because this is your first mammogram. This is nothing out of the normal. So I was fine. I was fine with it. And after that, after they did my mammogram, they told me to sit in the office for a moment. And I remember sitting in the office just before I put my clothes back on. And I remember the young lady walking out, the assistant walking out, and she walked out by herself. And about 7 minutes later, I remember looking down at the floor when the door opened, and instead of 2 feet walking back in, there were like 6 feet walking in. And then I remember the only thing that I heard was, can you please get dressed and meet us in the office? And that's how my journey began. That day changed the rest of my life, even up until this very moment. And I wasn't prepared for the fight that was in front of me. But I promise you, that fight will force you to fight like you've never fought before. So, yeah, that's my beginning. That's my beginning.
Yeah, that's a lot to take in, and not getting off topic, but as you all know, I had my mother's sister recently passed from breast cancer, and I'll never forget that the day that she was diagnosed. I wasn't at the actual doctor's appointment, but the only reason why she had gone to the hospital was because that day she had passed out in my grandmother's kitchen, and her son took her to the hospital. I guess they did tests and everything, and she must have told them about her left breast had grown a lot. So she went to the hospital. They did a scan, and they immediately scheduled her to see an oncologist that next week. When we got the call, my sister, my youngest sister, was her primary caregiver and would take her to all her appointments. And when they went to see the oncologist, my sister called us that day and told us that she had a lump, and it was breast cancer. I guess it had gotten to the point. What is it like? Because I'm trying to get highly educated in it, because when it hits home is when you really take it serious. I knew you all had breast cancer, but I didn't know what you guys went through until I actually saw my aunt go through this this process. And my sister said when my aunt got the news, she said she was sitting in back of her crying, and she said my aunt was crying as well. But when she got the news, when she got her results, it had already spread in her neck. They found it in her neck in a couple of her lymph nodes. So then I remember she had to go get another. I guess, is a PET scan a more detailed test? Because she had to end up getting a PET scan.
You said a PET scan?
Yeah. Yeah. She had to end up getting that done, and that's when we found out it was in her liver. And I recall that day I called Trika. I was at work upset, and I said, Trika, please be honest with me. Don't cut no corners. I said, because they're saying that it's in her liver, and was it her pelvic lymph nodes, in her neck, her back, and different spots. And Trika told me honestly, she said, when it's in the liver, that's a main organ, and it's not good. So I can't even imagine how you felt, Tasha, that day when you got your results.
Yeah.
It's just something to go through.
Yeah, it's a tough thing. It's a tough thing.
Trika, you want to share your story?
Sure. My story is a little kind of crazy. At the time, I was stationed in Panama City, Florida. I had just gotten out the military, but my husband was still in, and we had 2 kids at the time. I had my oldest daughter, I think at the time when I got diagnosed, was 6. And my youngest daughter was 3. And Our babysitter, she was a Asian lady, but she lived on base with us, but they had gotten orders to go to Chile. So we were going to a going away party for them, and we went and we're sitting there talking, laughing. I go to hug her bye. I hug her bye, and all of a sudden, when I let her go, I felt this sharp pain in my chest. And I was like, oh, Lord, did she have a brooch on or did she have something on that, hit me in my chest area? So I looked at her. She had on a jacket. So dumb me thinking, oh, well, maybe the zipper on the jacket is what did that. I didn't think anything of it. Went on about my business. We got home and I told my husband, I said, I got this pain in my chest. I said, well, maybe when I went to hug Patty, um, her jacket or something caught me in the chest area. I said, but it hurts. So a couple days went by and it was still bothering me, but I didn't think anything of it. And then I went to feel it, and it was a little pea, like a size of a pea at the time. But me following the myths that everybody says cancer doesn't hurt, that's a myth. Um, so I still didn't pay anything about that. Was in January. By the time April came, it had gotten a little bit bigger, but it wasn't as painful. So of course, with the military, I went to the doctor. She was like, "Oh, we're just gonna send you for a needle aspiration. It's in the milk duct. It's probably just clogged because you were breastfeeding." I said, "My baby 3. I stopped breastfeeding a long time ago." So that afternoon, well, it took a while actually for me to get to the doctor because, of course, the military, they drag their feet. They just take their time. So by the time I got to the doctor, he stuck a needle in it and was trying to aspirate fluid out of it. I mean, he stuck my chest like 5 times. Nothing would come out, and that pain was so unbearable. So he said, well, Miss Overton, I can't get anything out of it, but I don't think that you should worry about it. I don't think that anything is wrong. It's going to be fine, but let's just do a biopsy. I'll never forget this. We did the biopsy on my birthday, June 15th, 2007. When I woke up, I saw all I could see. I had gotten so sick from the anesthesia. All I could see was my husband was at the foot of the bed. And it's so funny because it was just like a cloud around him. I could only see his face. He was boo-hoo crying. And then my mom was like, why are you crying? He said, Trika, they said it's cancer. Y'all, my whole world shattered. And I was like, what? Think now, I'm 9 hours away from home, 2 small children. My husband was getting ready to deploy to Iraq. I had no family. I was like, what am I going to do? Fast forward, I opted to do radiation and a lumpectomy. But the funny part about it, I thought I had reached, the peak where I was cancer free. 11 years later, just by fluke, doing a random the breast MRI, they found another lump, the same area, but y'all, this time the tumor was the size of the tip of a ballpoint pen. You know how small that is? What are the odds of finding that? So at that time, like I said, the first time I was diagnosed was 32. The second time was 42. I told the doctor, I said, take them. I said, take them. I said, because they done tried to kill me twice. I said, I got 2 small children. But ironically, like I said, I keep saying my journey's different. By the time I got diagnosed the second time, my husband had already died of cancer. So now my whole world, my whole support system was gone because that man took care of me like a piece of fine china while I was sick. So now all I had was my daughter that's a senior in high school and my youngest daughter that's a freshman in high school. How am I going to tell them I have cancer again? So this time I opted to do a double mastectomy. I did chemo, and here I am, by God's good graces, 2-time survivor.
Thank God. And I'm glad that you touched on that myth, because you hear that all the time, that cancer does not hurt. That's what I was personally told, because I freaked out after the passing of my aunt, and I was going to get I wanted diagnostic mammograms done, all kinds of stuff, and because I had told my doctor that my breasts were like feeling funny and it was kind of hurting, and she said, well, first of all, cancer doesn't hurt. Um, and I guess that gets into my next. We'll get into all that, but I'm so happy that you cleared that myth up, because that's a big myth. Because you said you're having chest pains, and everybody's story is different. But I just, I'm so happy you cleared up that myth, because that's what a doctor told me. She said cancer does not hurt.
Well,
And these doctors, they don't know, they don't know everything. But I'm just saying, like, for you to say you had chest pains, you thought somebody was sticking you with a brooch, maybe you got stuck with someone's brooch, just shows that we just don't know where, what all the symptoms are. So, Trika, I thank you for sharing that with us. Okay, Miss Shonda.
Okay, I just have to start with saying, like, this rotation and how you ask this question is like, has to be God, or like God is all in this, because much like Trika, we've all heard cancer does not hurt. Even when I went in for my first appointment, the doctor said, I don't know what you felt that day, because cancer does not hurt. He said it had to be in God. So I'll back up. So how I actually started the journey is, I was having dinner with a friend, and much like Trika, we were just talking regular afternoon, and then all of a sudden a sharp pain like almost took me out of my chair. And I held my chest and I was like, ow. And she said, are you okay? And I said, no, I'm okay. But then when I got home, I didn't feel the pain anymore, but I did a self-exam, and I really didn't feel anything. But this is what I said to myself. Oh, it'll be okay, because I had a mammogram actually coming up like within the next 2 months. So fast forward, I did the mammogram. And when I went into the mammogram, they found something, and then I had to go back to do a biopsy. And sure enough, they did find the tumor. And at that point, it was stage 3. So when my doctor told me, and I have to back up once again, 2 years previously, while I was in my shower at home, I don't know. It was like God showed me being diagnosed with cancer. And when I was in the shower, I was like, what does that mean? I don't know if because I had other family members that were dealing with it. You know how your mind, like you said to me, like when someone's diagnosed, it's like your mind starts playing tricks on you. So I just didn't know what that was. But that was 2 years prior to me being diagnosed. And I was like, I don't know. So back to the day that I was actually diagnosed and my doctor telling me. So when I went into his office, he called me in after getting my results. And he was like, LaShonda, you have breast cancer. And he proceeds to push a box of Kleenex toward me because I had no reaction. And he said, I don't know if you understand what I'm saying. I'm saying that you have breast cancer. He said, I'm going to leave the room and let you gather yourself, and I'll come back and we can discuss further. He came back and I was still fine. I was fine because what he did not know, the morning before I came to his office, I prayed about the diagnosis. And it was almost as if God was sitting next to me during my time of prayer. And I heard his still voice say, I got you. So when I went into the appointment, I was fine. My husband took me, and my son was like really small at the time. So when he shared the news with me, like there was no reaction. There was nothing. I mean, like they all thought I was in shock, but it was like that small, still voice that I heard the morning before I received my diagnosis. It's like I held on to that. I held on it so much so, even during the time when I was going through my treatments and the surgeries and everything like that. my mom even told me, she was like, it was a really rough time when you were going through, but most of us, we held on to you, your strength, your courage, your faith, because they had to operate in the way that I was operating. I don't know. I just believed when I heard the words "I got you." I took that and I ran with it. So when I shared my news with my family and friends, I even said to them, I said, "I will not be offended if you have to, stay away to collect yourself." But I did not want negative energy. I didn't want crying, sad, none of that. What I wanted is, and this is, I adopted a slogan during the time I was going through this: focus on the finish. I refuse to focus on what they found. My whole thing was, I got this little baby. I need to wrap this up while he on his summer break. And as the saying goes, asking you shall receive. I told my doctor I had 60 days for them to wrap this right on up. I was in surgery on day like 56. So, I mean, I was all well, even though it was a rough time, and I'm sure we'll get into it. But the whole day of finding, it was the still voice, I got you. And now, 11 years later, he's still here and he's keeping me.
Amen to that, Shonda. And thank you for sharing your story. So you basically had the same situation as Trika as far as the pain.
Absolutely.
You were having pain.
Yeah. Well, it was just that one occurrence in the restaurant, that sharp pain. And that's when, the first oncologist, I said, he was like, well, Miss Greene, I don't know what that was you were feeling, because cancer doesn't hurt. And he said it had to have been God, like, nudging you to go ahead with the mammogram. So I don't know.
So let me ask you ladies this, and I'm piggybacking off of what I said I would come back to when I said, I would talk about the deodorant situation me and Trika had discussed. Because I remember talking to Trika, and she was telling me, as far as them pinpointing it, and Trika, Tasha, you said that, they asked you, as far as you said, you have a family history of breast cancer. Had they, for all three of you, did the physicians mention what actually causes breast cancer? Like, as far as, is it hereditary factors? Is it environmental exposure? Is it, chemicals or your lifestyle? Because me and Trika had a conversation years ago, and she was saying they were trying to pinpoint it to the aluminum in deodorant. And that's when, that day when Trika told me that, I quit using deodorant that had aluminum in it. I use a more anything that's natural. Did the physicians even pinpoint how you possibly were diagnosed?
This is Trika. Well, for me, mine's a little different. I'm triple negative. So that's the most aggressive form in Black women, because they don't know what causes it. So, like, I'm not on any hormones. I don't take any medications. I am literally triple negative. So for me, they were thinking it was a number of things, that it could be environmental. It could be, some of the bases I was stationed at. They just don't know, because, again, I'm triple negative.
So what you saying, bases, like military bases you were
Like the
stationed
military
at?
bases I was stationed at, correct.
Was it like, can you explain that just a little bit
Sure.
more?
So I was stationed at Fairchild, and this is where they're thinking that I could have been exposed to something. They had PFAS, which is like a firefighter foam, that they're trying to prove now that was contaminating the water. I was stationed there for like almost 4 years. I have several friends that have had breast cancer from that same base that was stationed with me. One female, she actually was from Charleston. She actually passed. I had two friends that passed with breast cancer from that same base that was stationed with me there. My husband ended up with kidney cancer. So, like, what are the odds? That all of us have been diagnosed with cancer. And again, everybody who's been diagnosed with breast cancer that were my friends that were at that installation were triple negative.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
This is me, Tamara. I know, for me, And, I guess, and to say this, sometimes I'm very sensitive when I speak about my story because, mine is just, I feel like my story is a little different from everyone else's. Both of the, Trika and Shonda had pain. And that was the one thing that was, I think, preached from, all of my, just research and, speaking to nurse navigators and my doctors that, there's no such thing as pain. There's no such thing as pain. And I did not have pain. I had, discharge. So it is definitely a different, I think everybody's journey is just different, but it is, definitely a form of pain because my pain came after the fact, in the process of me going up to my surgery. That's just so weird because I didn't have pain. I just had discharge, and then discomfort, going into my surgery. But for me, my doctors kind of looked at it more so as, my mother had, cancer, then had an aunt had breast cancer. So it was more like, genetic differences, hereditary. And of course, when I found mine, I had several sweat glands that were blocked under my armpit that were, I had no idea. I thought that I didn't really find them until they pushed on and realized that there was several that were blocked under. So the reason why I feel from that point, just doing research, that a lot say that can cause a lot of the toxic buildup that comes under that armpit towards lymph nodes that can cause breast cancer. So that is kind of why I begin looking into, research for, non-aluminum deodorants and things of that sort that will help prevent some of those, beginning stages of the toxic sweat glands.
And for me, because of my history, family-wise, I had, at that time when I was diagnosed, by the time I was diagnosed, I had, I think, 3 of 5 paternal aunts who were previously diagnosed with breast cancer. So because of that family history, I actually started doing my mammograms a little earlier than they recommend. Even I actually started paying out of pocket in the beginning because, that was family history. So when I was diagnosed and I gave them the family history, they were like almost certain. They were like, oh, this has to be hereditary because what are the odds, right? So I did the genetic testing, which is a BRCA test, and it came back, it's not hereditary, which is crazy. So just listening to Trika saying about, the military bases and stuff, one thing that was brought up, I was in the Army Reserves for 8 years, and my job was a 54 Bravo, which is a chemical specialist. Now, although I was a reservist, anytime that I did go to duty or even my time in training, there were more times than not that I was exposed to different chemicals there. But that was not, they don't know, but it could be a possibility. But as for me, you could not tell me, like when I got that genetic testing back, it was going to be genetic, and it was not. So, yeah, we don't know.
Because I thought, and don't ask me why I thought this. I always thought maternal dominated paternal hereditary factors. So I'm thinking, and the thing is, we still don't know, because you know how, and I'm going to say this, in our community, the older folks try to keep things hush hush. So I really don't know my family history as far as medical history because nobody talks about anything. Yeah. When my aunt was diagnosed, this was a shocker because nobody, like I said, nobody talks about it. But after she passed away, I found out that my grandmother's sister had breast cancer, but it was never spoken about. We just knew she ended up passing, and then her other sister passed from uterine cancer, and then she had a brother who passed from prostate cancer. So, from this discussion today, as far as, Shonda and Natausha go, as far as family history, families have to discuss this. I feel like it's not fair to brush things under the rug, because we don't know what we've been, I don't want to say inherited, but we don't know, what's going on. Just like I said, it was a shocker when we found out that she had developed breast cancer. And I always thought that maternal outweighed paternal. So that's why I was freaking out, because she was my maternal aunt, and thinking that the pains I were having in my breast might have been cancer. I was just panicking. But I really think it needs to be discussed amongst our community and in the families.
I agree. This is Tasha. I do agree with that. And I will say this, with certain family members, that that kind of came in that situation. I feel like, and I don't want to stereotype. I don't want to do that. But a lot of the older generations believe that if you don't go to the doctor and you don't know, it doesn't exist. And I feel that a lot of the older generations, they've carried that up into what we have to now find out on our own. We have to change that direction when it comes to healthcare for ourselves and for our children and for our children's children and things of that sort. I believe that that's how they feel. They if you don't go, you won't find out, and if you don't find out, then it doesn't exist. And then when it does exist, it's too late. So that is something that we, as a new generation, we have to change that. They always say the big myth is men don't like to go to the doctor. Well, it's past men. It's past men. I think it's just a particular generation, possibly, but it's definitely something that needs to be changed.
And to piggyback on what Natausha just said, with the older generation, I also feel like with them, it was like they didn't share as much because it was like with shame. They didn't want anyone to know, or maybe they felt embarrassed. But for me, listen, embarrassed not, shame not one bit. I want to scream on, like, to everyone and let them know so they are informed. And there's nothing to be ashamed about it. And Natausha, you also said about men. I just want to put this in because we don't speak enough about it. Ironically, this week right here is Male Breast Cancer Awareness Week. Men, you need to be checking your boobs as well, because you too can have male breast cancer. A couple years ago, I think it was like 1 in every 100 male will be diagnosed with breast cancer. So it is very important, and I try to talk about it as much as I can because it is looked upon as it's women, but men, they are diagnosed with breast cancer as well.
And Shonda, you said that males are diagnosed as well. Can it be as intrusive as females?
If left untreated. Early detection saves lives. That's just not a slogan. That is real. The earlier you treat the thing, I feel like the higher the success rate. And they perform self exams just as we do. Because some may be uncomfortable with it. I mean, if they have a partner, spouse, whoever, like, phone a friend. It is just very important for them to also do self examinations as well.
I think, this is Trika, I think culturally, it's a problem in our race, and I hate to say that, but it's just something, it's like cancer is like the bad word. Like no one wants to really talk about it. And I found, and I can't voice this for every family, but I know in my family, it was like the black wall of shame for someone to mention cancer. Or I remember my grandma used to say, oh, they got the C word, because she didn't want to say it. But we have to make it open communication, especially like for my children. My children have horrible family history. When you have a mother that's had breast cancer and a father that's died of cancer, they have to know these things, because right now for them, they got to be so aware of their health care till it's unreal. So I'm constantly on them. And it's unfortunate because even in the medical world, my oldest is 23. He was supposed to get a mammogram 10 years earlier than what I was diagnosed. So that would have been 22. But insurance doesn't want to pay for it. because she's not having any problems. So it's like, we've got to stay on top of our health care. We're going to be our biggest advocates. If we don't advocate for ourselves, then we're going to be lost.
So Trika, being that she's 22, and that's what I don't like, being that she's 22 and has had a mom that has had breast cancer twice, and her father died from a cancer, insurance still won't pay for it.
No,
for her to have tests.
They told her because she's not having any problems that they will not pay for it. So, and she's covered by two insurances. She has Aetna and TRICARE. They will not pay for anything. So my oncologist, she says, as bad as it is, she hates to say it. He was like, just tell her to come in complaining of pain. And, and I just feel that's unfortunate. Hence why we're on a government shutdown right now, because they're trying to get rid of care. If we get rid of health care in general, our people are going to be one of the biggest races that's going to become extinct, because death is going to overtake us from lack of care, because the majority of us reside in rural areas.
Absolutely. I agree. I totally agree with that. When my aunt was diagnosed, because I got into the insurance industry, life insurance and health insurance, and my main reason was because I have aunts, my aunt and my uncles have these jobs that don't offer health insurance, and they're fine with that. But I say, you know what, I'm going to do something about that. So I got licensed in that for that reason, to provide health care. So it's not that she did not have health care. Her main reason was that she told us she was scared. She told that doctor she was scared and she thought it would go away. Mine, she's in her 60s. And she just let it go on because she was scared and she thought it would go away. And just like you said, Trika, if healthcare is taken away, yeah, that's that. I mean, we're being honest. That is it's going to be, especially for the rural area, we're going to start disappearing. But that was her reason for not going to the doctors, because she said she was scared and she thought it would go away. So let me ask you ladies this. And listening to these stories, I just, I can't even imagine what you guys, your emotions up and down. I know all that played a big factor in your journey. But could you give us a little bit of, what gave you, or who gave you strength to keep going on during these difficult moments?
I can start. This is LaShonda. So for me, I would say my son. At the time when I was diagnosed, my son was very young, and he was the only child. And not only the only child, he was a child that at 18 years old, doctors told me that I would never be able to conceive. So while I was going through, and I had a really, really hard time going through treatment. So much so, I think it was after my second or third treatment, and I had to go every 21 days. I literally told my family I wanted to stop the treatment. I could not take it anymore, because that's just how much damage it was doing to me, my body, my spirit. I just could not do anything. I went through a phase where I literally laid in my bed, and this is no lie, for 7 days, no food. Did not shower for, it was 2 days, because on the third day, my best friend called. She said, I'm telling you, if you are still in that same state, I am coming over there. So it was so hard on me. Like, I just wanted to give up. But then every time I saw his face, I couldn't, and I just continued on. But it was really hard. So I would just say my son. He really, yeah, it was him.
Natasha?
It would have to be my three children. It would be my boys. I have a relationship with my kids that it's very it's precious. I don't even know if there's a word that's created yet to describe the bond that we four have, but it is it's something as a parent to see your children suffer or hurt and go through things in life that that you can't control. You know, it's heavy, and I think with my diagnosis, that happened. You know, for just a moment when I had to tell my kids when I came home. But one thing that I know with my boys is that they trust me. There's a lot of things in life that I have made mistakes in. You know, I've done a lot of things wrong. You know, I've lost jobs. You know, I'm divorced. I've made bad financial decisions. All these real things. These are real. This is a real conversation. This is real stuff. I've made a lot of wrong turns in life. But the one thing that can never be taken away from me, I feel that I can hold my head up on, is being a good mom. I've been a really good mom, and I have really good kids. And I have built a relationship to where they trust me. And that means everything to me. So when I came home, I told myself before I got to them, I said to myself, I told God, I said, God, you have to give me, if it's just temporary strength, before I go in front of them, I need you to give it to me now, because the only way that they won't go through this heavy is if they see the strength in me, because they trust me. So I knew that if I told them I'm going to be okay, they were going to trust it. So I had to be okay. I had to do it. I had to get through this thing, because if I told them that, they were going to believe what I said. So I, sat them down and I told them, and I said, but everything's going to be okay. Everything's fine. Everything will be okay. And they all looked at me and said, oh, okay. And that was it. So from that moment, when I looked into their faces and they were like, oh, but mommy said it's going to be okay. Mommy's going to be okay. And at that point, I had to push. I had to do it. I had to keep the, oh, okay, in their tone. I had to keep the, oh, okay, in their spirit. I had to keep that. And in order to keep that, I had to do everything that the doctor said. I had to keep doing everything. I had to keep taking medication. I had to keep doing this. I had to keep going back. I had to do one ductectomy, another one, a lumpectomy. I had to do it. No matter what it took, I had to keep doing it, because I had to go back to their faces and hear their voices say, oh, okay. And that's what pushed me. And just like Shonda said, there was a point that I wanted to give up. There was a point that it was becoming too much, because even though I could hear them say, okay, I could still see on their face that they weren't okay when they saw the pain after the surgeries, and the sickness, and the weakness, and the hair loss, and the weight loss, and then the weight gain. And I remember saying to myself when I was in the bed, and I remember my youngest son came to the bedroom door, and he looked in, and he thought I was asleep, but I wasn't asleep. I just had my eyes closed because I was trying to get through some pain. This was like 4 days after my surgery. And he came to the door, and I remember him looking in. He peeked in because he didn't want to disturb me. And he peeked in, and I remember him looking in, and he dropped his head heavy, like he dropped his head, like he was so defeated. And he put his hands in his pockets, and he walked back down and went downstairs. And I remember saying, okay, I can't do it anymore. That's it. I can't do it. And I wanted to leave here, because I felt my presence wasn't making it okay. My presence, my physical, it wasn't keeping the okay with them. And, Shonda had a best friend that called and said, "Hey, get up." I didn't answer the phones. I didn't answer. I didn't want to hear it at that time. I didn't want anybody to come. And I wanted to leave here. I wanted to go. And because I said to myself, it would be better if they didn't see me in the state that I was in. Eventually, they'll get over it. Eventually. But by the grace of God, I pushed, I pressed, and I made it here. Because I knew that I promised them that okay. So it was my kids. It was my children.
Ooh, this is Trika. I'm listening to each one of their stories, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, our kids give us unshakable strength when we least expect it. Like I told you, my first time, my kids were young. But I'm gonna have to say that I actually pressed for them. I pressed for them and my mom. And I know that may sound crazy, but I'm my mom's only child, and she'd been through a lot. I knew that if I didn't make it, my mom wouldn't make it. And I'm saying to myself, like, Lord, my husband is a good man, but he gonna need help with these kids. I gotta make it. I gotta push. And that was the first time. So the kids, they were so eager when they would get off the bus because I wasn't woman enough to even walk them to the door. I remember one day crawling to the door to open the door to get them to come in the house. And I was so blessed that the bus driver, she knew what was going on. She would drop the kids off right at the front door so they would walk straight into the door. But the second time was a little different. I didn't want to do chemo. And, I'm a woman, so I'm a little vain. I didn't want to go through the process of losing my hair again, gaining the steroid weight, getting pudgy all over again, because I had worked so hard to get all that weight off the first time. So I told everybody I wasn't doing the treatment. I had already went, made sure my will was together, made sure all my stuff was together. I had already sat my oldest daughter down. Now remember, she's a senior in high school. I had already sat her down. I told her what all my accounts was, my passwords, who all my life insurance policies was with. I had already told her everything. And one day I was laying in the bed, and God came to me clear as day. Girl, you're the only parent they have. What are you talking about giving up? So that day, I got up. I called the oncologist. I said, I'm going to do chemo, but I don't want a port. I said, I'm over that. So she allowed me to do chemo through my veins. And let me tell you something. That was life-changing to get that chemo straight through my veins. On top of that, I had had a double mastectomy. And because I had already had radiation, it wasn't the best skin there. So the one side that actually had the breast cancer, all the skin that they had took from my stomach died. So my breast literally just died. It turned completely black. And it had to heal from the inside out. But I say all that to say, my kids gave me that undying strength because as I was coming out the hospital, my oldest daughter had had a bad car accident. Little did I know I was passing her in the hallway, coming in the hospital. I was going out. But they were trying to keep it from me because they wanted me to get better, and be better. So I'll have to say, my kids, my kids have been through a lot. Because when you lose a parent and then you have one that you think is on the brink of you losing, those kids had unwavering strength. So they've been my all in all outside of God.
I'm gonna tell you, listening to you guys' stories, I'm on the other end of this microphone getting emotional. Um, it's an emotional, I guess, having watched someone go through it. Hold on, let me take a second.
This is going to these stories are needed, Tamara. Shonda has a unique story. Trika has a unique story. And of course, there's my story. But these stories in this moment, it's going to help someone. It's going to help families. It's going to help that single mother. It's going to help that gentleman. It's going to help so many people realize that if it is a diagnosis, even if whatever it is, your story is going to be your story, and you have to get through your story the way that you have to get through your story, your journey. It's a way to get through it. It's a possibility. It's a possibility. It's a way. You have to press until you can't press anymore. You just have to continue to press until you can't press any further. And it's all right to get emotional. It's okay, but that's where support comes in at. That's where, the sharing. This is what this is for. And sometimes we hold things in, and it's needed to get it out. It's needed to get out. You went through a very, you went through a journey. Believe it or not, you're not sitting on our side, but with your, with your family member, with your aunt, that was the journey that you took with her. So we definitely can understand where the emotion is coming from. We can, just different seats, but we definitely can.
And just listening, because I know all three of you personally, and going through that journey with my aunt, I can't imagine, now I can just like you said, all three of you said, there's different journeys, but it's all the same. It's breast cancer. With her, to be honest, I did not know my aunt was going to pass away. I didn't. I was going because I went to a few appointments, but not all. Like I said, my sister was her primary caregiver, and she was so optimistic. She was going with what her doctor said, and I think the only reason why he was giving her hope with the chemo. But I'm gonna tell you, when she started that chemo and radiation, it tore her down. This is an aunt who, she was the life of the party. She was the one. I know you guys would see her around. If you saw her, she walking in, the community, always the same person. But when the day that I saw, she couldn't go out because she was always walking different neighbors' house, going across the railroad tracks. One of our communities, we call up the track. We would say Jackie marching, she marching up the track. But when I saw that she couldn't even leave the house, it tore her down. And I tried to prepare myself because I would go to, Tasha, I would call you and I would call Trika. And Trika would always tell me, Tamara, that chemo and radiation is a beast. It's a beast. And Tasha, I remember a conversation you told me, make sure she drinks plenty of Ensure.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of her lifestyle and not getting checkups and not, developing a healthy lifestyle, I think a lot of that incorporated into her going down. She was diagnosed February of 2024. She died in September. And I swear to you, I was not, and I don't know if mentally I didn't want to accept it, but I did not know that day I went to the hospital that my aunt would be passing. And I think she was tired because she said she was tired. And she, she gave herself to the Lord before she passed away. I made sure of that because she told me she would pray every day. But just to hear these stories and, thinking how each of your stories could have went a different way. I don't know, honestly, how I would be able to take that because we did lose another classmate to breast cancer. And I didn't take that very well. And that's why I got you three on here because it has to be talked about. It has to be. And it needs to be taken serious. If you have insurance, insurance covers preventive care. Come on now. And my aunt honestly waited too late. And it took her passing out in the kitchen for her to even go to the doctor. But sometimes I wonder about the chemo and radiation, and I'm not going to lie, I question it a lot. Because I honestly feel that's what took her out. She tried, and like Trika said, they say it goes from the inside out. So when she started getting it, she started developing these wounds, like open sores on her body. And her son would tell me, well, that the doctor said it's doing what it needs to do. It's pulling out all the toxins. But she was in so much pain. And she would tell me, I wouldn't wish this pain on my worst enemy. But she never complained about anything else. She kept on going to her treatments. She said, I wouldn't wish this pain on anyone else. And I'm getting open because it needs to be talked about. Because if you can avoid going through that, you need the information out there. And I don't want to get too mushy, any more mushy than what I'm getting, because hearing these stories really has me emotional. Tasha, you about to say something?
No, well, yeah. I remember that conversation we had, when you called me and told me everything that was going on. I was so shocked. I was shocked that it was happening in such a fast, in a fast pace. And, just piggybacking on what you said, when you went in to see her, you didn't realize that, she would be passing. And my mother, she had a very aggressive fight as well with, with her cancer. And I remember saying to myself, surely it wouldn't be this fast, surely it will, whatever's happening, we'll have time. And that is the biggest thing. If I advocate for anything now, even if it's behind the scenes, it's trying to get people to find out and do this early detection and early prevention, take the BRCA test, find out. I think the earlier, just like Shonda and Trika said earlier, the earlier you find out, the better, chances you are fighting this thing, and that is so important. And if that is something that I could put on a banner, that's what I would, parade around every day. We have to find out as soon as possible so that it gives us a better advantage at facing this thing head on, and fighting it. But we have to overcome that first. That's the first and foremost, thing that we have to do. My mother, she knew in the beginning and didn't tell us, and when we found out, we did everything we could, but it was to the latter part. But that's what we need to get out now. We need to get this out. And if we don't, and if the insurance is not it, we have to find resources. And there are resources out there that can help people to get this screening and get testing and get things done. There's, national organizations, there's local organizations. I am connected with a few. We have to really get that out and get, resources out to people that can get the help and have this done sooner than later. Sooner than later.
And Tamara, to piggyback on what you said, you said you had questions about the chemo and the radiation treatment. I always say chemo cures, but it also creates, because some people, and I don't know if Trika and Tasha, if you all are still experiencing things, but a lot of times people don't realize, like 11 years later, I'm still dealing with the after effect of treatment. Daily, I deal with neuropathy in my feet. It's just a struggle. So it doesn't just stop there. Yeah, it's a good thing for the moment. It beats you down while you're going through, but it also creates other issues in your body. I deal with neuropathy, and chemo brain, if you all have heard that term, is real. And chemo brain on top of perimenopause is crazy out here. Like brain fog is crazy.
Yes.
But people, and I just, and I tell people all the time, like when someone goes through cancer, it's just not like diagnose, you get surgery and you do treatment and it's over. It is forever. In October, I wear signature pink bag and a pink sneaker every day in October. And I was kind of late just doing other things this year. And my coworker said, she was like, LaShonda, you're not wearing pink sneakers? I said, listen, if I never wear anything pink and if I wear black every day for the rest of my life, I'm going to always remember I had cancer. So yeah, think pink, but that is I'll just always, it is something that I will never forget. And it was definitely life changing.
So during this journey, can you ladies say that faith, or how did your faith or your mindset, guide you through the healing? Did faith play a big part in your healing journey?
This is Trika. Faith was all I had when I didn't have anything else. Faith and hope. Faith to know that God will take care of me, and hope that I was going to get through it. If your mind is not stayed on Him through the process, and if you don't know Him for yourself during that process, you'll be so lost. Because I'm telling you, to do chemo twice, I know my life will never be the same. Will never be the same, because like Shonda said, there are some issues that I have now I will probably have for the rest of my life because of chemo. And my doctor just told me the other day, significantly so because I've had it twice. So when I tell you I ask God every day to grant me a little more the next day than what He gave me the day before, and to give me grace, that's why I've learned to give people grace, because I can't run this race without Him. He has been my sounding board. I know that when I was in the most pain, and my mom tells me this often, she said, I would just say, Jesus, Jesus. She said, I would just say that. And for me, coming from a family of faith, my grandparents were the pastors of the church, that's all I know is that God will sustain me. So I'm going to have to say faith was the biggest part of my journey outside of the doctors, because I had to have faith before I went to them.
And this is Shonda. So yeah, just like Trika said, there is no way that I would have been able to handle any of that and continue to deal with what I deal with on a daily without my faith. As I spoke earlier when I said, I heard that still voice, He said, I got you. I took that thing and I ran with it because, even going through my surgeries, having the mastectomy, and I went the route and I had a deep flat where they did the reconstruction, using my stomach and all that. Because my veins were so fine, I was on that surgery table for over 16 hours. So on top of the cancer, that's a long time for someone to be out under anesthesia on a table and still come out on top. So I had, what else? What else? Who else would be able to do that and to continue to keep me? And not only that, like your mind, because this thing plays mind games. It really, if you are not grounded in your faith, yeah, you could easily be like, I don't want to do this anymore. So my faith was everything. It was everything, and it played a huge part. And I continue to lean on Him on a daily. I continue to lean on Him.
This is Tasha. I have to agree with both ladies, and piggyback the same way. It's if it was nothing other than faith that got me through this, and is continually getting me through it. It was my relationship with the Father. It was my relationship with Him. There's a scripture that I carried with me during this time, and it was 1 Peter 5:10. And the words say, after you have suffered for such a while, then shall He come to see. I held on to that word then for a long time, every day. When I got myself together and I said to myself, all right, I have to do this, but God, I don't know how to do this. I have to do it, but I don't know how to do it. So you have to do it for me. And all I kept listening to, I just kept playing that scripture over and over and over. Then. So that means when I go through this, then he's going to come. Then means he's going to have to come. So I have to get through the suffering. I had to get through all the pain. I had to get through all of this, but I had to keep my mind. I had to keep my spirit and my mind directed on him. There was no way that I would have put myself and my children and my family through, because I was the quarterback. They were looking for me. And they followed what, the direction that I walked in. I'm glad that I had a relationship with him before entering into this journey. I'm glad that I did. This journey it can sway you. It can cause you to become wary, but you have to rebuild your strength in God and keep it there at all times, because the Father said he will never leave you nor forsake you. And those are words you have to walk on. You have to stand on. You have to eat. You have to sleep. You have to breathe those words every day, every second, every hour, no matter the cost. You have to stay grounded on those words. And that's what I did. And I made sure that my children stayed grounded on those words. And my dad stayed grounded on those words. And my family stayed grounded on those words. I refused to allow anybody to come off those words. He'll never leave. No matter what the situation or outcome may be, he won't. He'll always be there. And that's something that I had to keep with me, through the whole journey. And even to now, even now, still dealing, just like they said, it's just amazing how our stories are they're just braids that are just entwining together, because there's things that I haven't even spoken about. I can't believe I'm saying this, that I still deal with from treatment, that I don't share with anyone, just maybe 2 or 3 people that know. And it's heavy that I still have to carry that, but I still say, God, I thank you, because it could have been a different way. So those are the things that I still carry, but I still say thank you. I still thank him, for all things. But for the 3 of us, when we say faith, and I mean, I'm sure it's, anyone that has this, had this, but the 3 of us speaking today, the word faith, I'm sure has magnified in our lives from beginning to now. It is magnified, and it's going to continue to do so, because there's no way without him. I don't want to get too deep and get too, don't want to get too heavy, but there's no way without him. And that goes for any situation that anyone is dealing with. There's no way without him. You must have him. You must keep him. And as long as you keep him, he will surely, 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 surely keep you.
And faith for me, I prayed every day that God would heal my aunt. But see, my problem was I was praying for the physical. Mm-hmm. In the beginning. I was praying for the physical. I was being selfish, because listening to your stories and watching what she went through, I didn't know the pain. I didn't know what she was going through, and obviously she had developed her relationship with the Lord, that she knew she was ready to go, because she did not want to bear that pain anymore. She wanted the pain gone. And he obviously showed her she can be in no pain, and she could be with him, living eternally. And I was being very selfish. I'm not gonna lie, because I was praying for physical. I was praying for her, her physical healing. And it took me, I'll say about almost 2 months down the line, it came to me, and it probably was the Lord talking to me. It took me one day hearing a voice tell me, she may have not been healed physically, but she was spiritually healed. Her soul is healed. She's in a better place now. Because I had to get that selfishness. We always think about self. And I had to get that selfishness out of me, because I didn't know what she was going through. But when she said that day at the hospital that she was ready, and her son whispered in her ear, Mama, you did well. you don't have to do this for us anymore. You have raised your children and we will be fine. And it literally took me 2 months for a voice to come to me and say she was healed. It may have not been the healing I wanted, but it was the healing that God gave her. Because, she could have, been, healed physically. But to be healed physically, she may have not got that spiritual healing, here on earth. Things could have went a different way if she was physically healed. It could have, came back worse. So when that came to me that her soul was healed and she was spiritually healed, it was like a burden. It was lifted off of me. So I live with that, as far as faith, I live with that all the time. My family, each one of us, we think about her every day. My grandmother says she cries every day, but she knew God knew what he was doing. So yeah, I think faith plays a big part in anyone's healing journey. Shonda, you were about to say something?
Yeah, if I can just share really quick, and it goes like Natausha said, she held on to that scripture, and me saying, I heard the still voice of God saying, "I got you." Just a really quick story. So, the day before when I received my diagnosis, I held on to a song. I love music. I love everything about music. Dissect. Everybody knows that, right? So I held on to a song by Marvin Winans, "I Feel Like Going On," and I would play that song over and over and over and over again every single day, like until I had my surgery. So the day before I had my surgery, I went to do my pre-op, and a friend came down from Somerville to visit with me to just go through with my appointments that day. And we had lunch at this restaurant here in Savannah. And it's a place where the line is always long. We stood in line for an hour, which was fine. But the whole time I was in this line, I never saw anyone that was out of the ordinary. So as soon as I walked into the restaurant, comes through the back door, because I guess he was waiting in a car, another one, was Marvin Winans. And it's a family style restaurant, so you could sit with random people, whatever. We were seated right next to his table. So I'm usually not starstruck. I mean, I'm just not, but I was like, okay, God, I see what you're doing. Mm-hmm. So I went to him, and I explained to him, what I was preparing to do the next day. And I thanked him for even giving us such song, because it has helped me through the journey. And he said to me, he really appreciated it. And he said, but before you leave the restaurant, I need you to come back to my table and I want to pray with you. So I said, I'm sharing it because not only he's faithful when he told me I got you, he's very strategic. So I felt like in that moment, if I had any doubt going into the surgery, even though, I told myself every day, well, he got me. If I had any doubt about what was to happen the next morning, that was confirmation, like, wow, he got me. Because never in a million would that happen. The artist that I listened to, who was helping me through the journey, I would be seated next to, who was so kind enough to even listen to my story, my testimony, and to offer prayer for me.
Oh, so, God knew what he was doing, honey.
I'm so serious. It was just so wild to me. I was like, is this really happening? It was really like an outer body experience, Tamara, because like I was in the line for an hour. I never saw this man. I never saw him. He was not in the line with me. No, he wasn't. He was waiting in a car until it was time for him to be seated and for him to come through the back door, and we sat right next to each other. So
yeah, God, he knew what he was doing.
Faith is everything. We got to hold on to it. We have to hold on to it, because he is a man that he shall not lie, and his word will never, ever return void. So I just wanted to share that. And I try to share it because when, doubt will come in, it can easily come in and sway what you have already hyped yourself. I believe, but God is strategic, and he proves himself all the time.
Amen, Sister Shonda. So before we wrap up, there's a question I want. There's more of like a sentence I want each of you ladies to finish. And it goes like this. How would you finish this sentence? My journey with breast cancer taught me to. See y'all thinking about it.
Now, this is Trika. I thought about this question. My breast cancer journey has taught me to live, laugh, and love harder, to be intentional in everything that I do. That's what this journey has taught me. When my mind tells me to call somebody, I call them. I'm at a place in my life where I just want to love, show people grace, be intentional about any and everything that I do. And most of all, live my life that's pleasing so that when my time has come, he can say, job well done.
Amen.
This is Shonda. Trika said the word. Mine is be intentional. Be intentional in every which way that you move. And that is how you love, how you give grace to others. I am so intentional. And the things that I thought that were serious, they ain't that serious. So be intentional. Yeah, just live and love hard. Love hard.
I guess mine would be, and those are beautiful. I was trying to write them down real quick before y'all were talking, so I can keep them with myself too. Intentional and love hard. I guess mine would be, this journey has taught me to push until it's all right. And when I say all right, it's taught me to push until it's all right. There's a phrase that I use all the time that I got from my uncle that says, in the end of things, everything will be all right. And if things are not all right, then it's not the end. So you have to continue to go and press. So my journey has taught me to press until everything is all right, to continue to push, to continue to take each day that God gives me and just make sure that everything is all right. Loving my kids all the way through the end, loving my father, my family, being intentional. That's an amazing word. Loving more, laughing more, making sure that everything is all right, getting to all right, just getting to all right. And my all right is just making sure that I survive every day to the fullest, not taking one day for granted, not one day, not one day, putting everything I can into every day, not regretting, but living. And I think that's that this journey has taught me that my all right is my presence. My all right is my presence.
Powerful words. Thank you, ladies. And as breast cancer survivors, what advice or what would you share with other women, especially in our community, the black women in our community? What advice or what would you share, for newly diagnosed or people or women walking this path? What message would you share to them today if you could speak to them?
I would say never be shy to advocate for yourself. We are our biggest advocates, and it is so important. We have to listen to our bodies. When you go get exams and you're still uncomfortable, what the physicians are saying, it's okay. You're not crazy. Go to another one. Get a second opinion, a third if need be, because sometimes it's necessary. I fired my first oncologist because I was uncomfortable, and I'm glad I did. So I would say if anyone is going through, be it breast cancer or any type of illness, never shy away from being your own advocate.
This is Tasha. I guess I would say to them, don't be afraid to take care of you. Don't be afraid to, you know, make sure that you're okay. You know, make your doctor's appointments, sit down and have discussions. You know, if there are issues or things that come up, research for yourself. Take the advice of your physicians, and then do research, for yourself, and make decisions. Make the healthiest decisions for yourself. Take care of you. Take care of you. Don't wait for a family member to push you. Don't wait for, a spouse. Or take care of you, and don't be afraid doing it. I think women, I think anyone, afraid of diagnosis and just being ill or just having things to come about. But it doesn't stop there. It doesn't stop there. There's so many things out here now that, we have treatments and medications, and it's so many different things. It doesn't stop with the diagnosis. Make sure that you're taking care of you and prioritizing you and putting you first and not waiting for someone else.
This is Trika. I would have to say boundaries. Don't be scared to set boundaries, because you need to keep positive people, positive energy in your space. And it's okay if you have to separate yourself from people who don't bring that to your life or bring value while you're going through your struggle. Again, my words for this year is to be intentional and set boundaries. And you have to have them, and you have to be okay with having them, because at the end of the day, you are what matters in that moment.
Thank you, ladies. Well, that wraps up this first session of Talks with Tam. I'd like to thank my beautiful guests, Shonda Greene, Natausha Mitchell, and Lutricia Overton, for sharing your strength, your stories, and your hearts with us today. Let's keep spreading awareness, showing up for our survivors, and taking care of ourselves and one another. And don't be afraid. I want to tell the listeners, do not be afraid to reach out. These ladies are more than willing to answer questions. Natausha has her organization, I Press, which is you can find it on Facebook. LaShonda, I know you say you're doing different things. You got some things coming up that you're looking into doing. And Trika, I know you do a lot of things. You advocate hard for breast cancer awareness. So I just want my listeners not to be afraid to reach out to these three beautiful souls. And I want to thank them today for joining me and taking time out of their day for, speaking on this serious disease. Once again, I'm Tam, and I'll talk to you soon. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you. Have a good rest of your day.
Thank you. Bye, ladies. Enjoy.
Thank you. Same.
Bye-bye. Thanks. Thank you to my guests, Shonda Greene, Natausha Mitchell, and Lutricia Overton, for sharing your strength, your stories, and your hearts with us today. Let's keep spreading awareness, showing up for survivors, and taking care of ourselves and one another. I'm Tam, and I'll talk to you soon. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this channel.